Professor Peterson, let's start with you. So this question says, you present your issue with Bill C-16 to be that the infringement of freedom of expression regarding gender pronouns is a problem. Do you hold the same stance with other discriminatory language in the Human Rights Code, such as being able to use racist terms with regard to students? And if you believe that one of these things is a violation but not the other one, why? I'm not sure I read that out all that well, but you get the idea.
Okay, well, first of all, I don't think that these issues are the same. I don't think they're the same at all. I mean, I've been thinking about the pronoun thing, you know, because one of the things that people, it put me back on my heels for a while, because the claim was basically, well, it's something like, why doesn't the mean professor just play nice and respect people by using their pronouns? And it took me like 3 weeks to unpack that, because who gets questioned about pronoun use? I don't know why the hell I use the pronouns I use. I use them because they're part of the language. I use he and she because that's what everyone uses. And so then I had to think about, well, why do we in fact use pronouns? And we use them in part for the same reason that we use other categories, and that's to simplify the world for functional purposes, roughly speaking. But then I was thinking, well, is the use of he and she a mark of respect? And the answer to that is, well, no, it's not a mark of respect. It can't be a mark of respect. What you call 4 billion people can't be a mark of respect, right? It's a mark of basic categorization. And so then the claim comes up, well, if someone wants you to use a particular pronoun, then you're disrespecting them if you don't. It's like, okay, let's think that through a bit. Well, that assumes that when I'm using he or she for people in normal parlance, that I'm actually indicating my respect for them. And that's not true. It's like, if I don't know you, I classify you generically, and basically I classify you in terms of how you present yourself publicly. I suppose that's your gender expression. And then I nail you with whatever pronoun seems to fit. It has nothing to do with respect. And besides that, you bloody well don't get to demand my respect. Why should you? You know, I mean, it's not like I respect everyone. That's a foolish thing to do. You respect people who are respectable. You know, you make value distinctions between people, and that doesn't mean you illegally discriminate against them. Those aren't the same thing. But I'm all for value judgments. So don't tell me that I'm not respecting people when I don't use their gendered pronouns. And the other thing is, I don't buy this whole idea that the people who are putting this legislation forward are valid representatives of the trans community. That's what they say they are. We have mechanisms for deciding whether someone's a valid representative of a community, and that generally involves democratic voting. I've received at least 20 letters from transsexual people who are on my side, and by the way, 0 from others, believe it or not, who are perfectly happy with the idea of gendered pronouns. It's just they want to be the other one. Now, you can have a discussion about that, and there's lots of things to be said about it, but the idea that this community that's coming out and demanding these rights is somehow representative of this homogenous oppressed minority, I think is rubbish.
Is Professor Peterson, as a clinical psychologist, refusing to acknowledge how damaging it could potentially be to an individual to disregard their identity?
It's a very difficult question to even engage with, because I don't understand it. It makes things so simple that you can't discuss them properly. All I do in my clinical practice, and I have about 20,000 hours of experience in my clinical practice, and I've dealt with all sorts of people, far more variation in people than the typical person ever encounters, and I think I've done it at least reasonably competently. All my discussions with people in my clinical practice are about their identity, given the definition of identity that I brought forth, how they feel about themselves, how they conceptualize themselves, because those are two different things, how that plays out in their interactions with other people, and what the functional significance of that is. And I'm going to say forthrightly, well, 2 things. One is that I don't believe that any of my clients have had cause to worry about my interpretation of their identity, because what I do in my practice is help them discover what that is. I'm seriously not interested in imposing any ideas of identity onto someone, because I can't do that. I don't know what the right vehicle is for you to travel through life. What I can help you do is articulate your concerns. I can ask you questions where I see contradictions in your self-articulation. I can help you make plans for the future. And I've helped thousands and thousands and thousands of people, by the way, make plans for the future with the stuff that I do online. And so I'm helping people build a genuine identity. Well, and that's what I do. So that's the answer to that question, and I think I do it well. I mean, in the stuff we've done from a research perspective with the Future Authoring Program, which I offered to people free a week and a half ago to help them catalyze their identities, we've helped 5,000 university students increase their grade point average 20% and decrease their dropout by the same. And the biggest effect has been with men and non-Western ethnic minority students who've accelerated their performance up beyond the range of the normal for the dominant culture. A pure psychological intervention, I might say, and not a sociological intervention. So I'm perfectly willing to stack my record on identity formulation up against anyone's. And I should also point out that I think where I'm most vulnerable in this entire debate, and I expect this will happen, and there's already been noise about it on the Ontario Psychological Association website, I think they'll probably come after my clinical license. So that'd be my guess. So
I think we might be straying a little away from
Yeah.
the question now, so just thank you.
No, we're not, because that question involved my clinical practice. I'm not straying a bit. That involved my clinical practice, and there was a reason that the question was posed. So I'm not straying.
Thank you. Why do you feel that someone's personal gender identity and pronouns infringes your free speech? Can one not also argue, based on your interpretation, that professors can use racial slurs in their classroom and that the inability to do so would violate their freedom of speech?
Well, that's pretty much the same question, I think. I think that we're crossing a dangerous line, and the line is the requirement that's being put upon people by government agencies with the full force of the law behind them to decide what language categories you're going to use. When I opened this debate, this forum, I tried to explain what this is about, and I couldn't explain everything that it's about because it's about too many things. But one of the things it's about is ideology and the distinction between the left and the right. And let's say, now, I truly believe that these made-up pronouns, of which there are many, dozens in fact, and there's no consensus on them.
I was just going to ask if you could go back to the point about the analogy between the racial slur and the
I don't think there's any
use.
analogy at all.
But
I
that's
think
what
the difference
people wanna
between,
hear you
I'm
on.
talking about compelled speech. There's a difference between saying that there's something you can't say and saying that there are things that you have to say. And I regard these made-up pronouns, all of them, as the neologisms of radical PC authoritarians. Do you understand that? And I'm not a fan of that sort of person. And the reason I'm not a fan of that sort of person is because I've done my homework. I've read everything I can get my hands on in the development of authoritarian political systems, and I know the literature inside out and backwards. And I am not going to be a mouthpiece for language that I detest. And that's that.